Okay, we are live and we're coming to you on, basically I look at this is the Ides of March 76 BC. So it's going to be that type of day that is going to be remembered with about that, as being that calamitous and monumental. One of the things that, Louis and Harry and I were discussing is that we are not going to be doing and discussing the latest Trump outrage, the latest felony he's committed, who's doing a Nazi salute, which brown guy is getting kicked out of the inner circle of power, which did not take long. I mean, come on, Vivek, you didn't see that coming. But we do think that we have lots to talk about that as we go forward, that will be of use, and it's going to be better for us to be firing from the sidelines and the periphery while we wait for things to happen, because unfortunately we will be reactive for the next few days, few weeks, getting the lay of the land. And after that, we'll be able to start formulating plans how to fight back. Harry, you were at the protest on January 18th. What did you find?
Well, there were a lot of people there. It wasn't nearly the 500,000 that was there at the Women's March, in 2016. It wasn't meant to be. They knew it wasn't going to happen, but there was energy there. When you can look at my Facebook page and see I took a couple of shots, but because I'm disabled, and I just happened to be at the head of the pack as we marched from basically the White House all the way to the Lincoln Memorial. By the time I got there, some young lady said, "Oh, kind sir, thank you for your service," because I had my veteran badge on. And she said, "We have disabled seating up front." So I literally got escorted up to. It was like Forrest Gump, that scene in Forrest Gump. I got escorted up to the foot of the steps right there by the media. So I got to see it all. And when I turned around, there, if you've ever been to the Lincoln Memorial and you look down the famous shot of the reflecting pool all the way to the Washington Monument, there were people lined up in packs and mobs on both sides of that reflecting pool, and on both sides of that outside on the mall itself. And there were even some idiots that were attempting to sort of tennis shoes skate on the ice. Me and some others were like placing bets that they were going to fall through. But anyway, so the mood was good. It was fine. It did what it was meant to do. And it wasn't terribly cold. Only it was above freezing, even though the ice was frozen on the reflecting pond. I bought my in 24 hours. I got this hat knitted up by a friend of my daughter's. This pussy hat here. This is the only color she had, and just worked out well because Army green was just absolutely perfect. I asked for a pink one. She said, "I don't have pink, but I've got scraps," and these were scraps. And now I got to take it off because it's just too hot. It's really warm.
Oh man.
But anyway, so there's my show and tell for the day. It was good. It was a good event. It needed to be done. It was absolutely the right thing to do. But I don't think you're going to see a lot more of that, because I think the loyal opposition here is going to be doing much more targeted and effective things. And with that, I'm going to shut up and turn it over to our legal consultant, Louis Lujan.
Oh, I'm a legal consultant, but I can do what I can.
I'm sorry, political. I meant political. My bad.
I figured you did.
Yeah, no. Compare him to lawyers, for God's sake.
Right.
No, his parents were married.
I can only imagine things were interesting. I don't know how many people actually got to saw any of the inauguration speech or any of the inauguration coverage today. I actually watched some of it. I mean, I was interested and curious, but yeah, definitely some of it was I don't know the word, maybe odd, a little bizarre, I guess is probably a good way to put it.
Dystopian, that come across?
It wasn't. That was the last one. This one was just strange. I don't know. I mean, my opinion. He seemed a bit more tired. Maybe it was the right way to look at it.
Probably has something to do with being the oldest president ever to take office.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. I didn't see him. I think the first inauguration speech I think was weirder. That was just scarier. This one just seemed to be a little bit more. He just didn't have a lot of energy. It just seemed like he was maybe more subdued. You know, the same stuff we've heard in the past. Nothing new.
Sleepy Don.
Just delivered in a much more tired fashion, I thought. That was my take on it. But you got to look at it yourself.
Well, I mean, I've run across something interesting here, and I'm sure you're seeing the same things. And it's being called, the memes are the sore winners. That here they are. They have Congress, presidency. They own the judiciary, and it's still not enough. It's like because and it's like I'm having this ongoing fight with one of my very close relatives who I adore and love and still will do. But because I'm not submitting and, bowing down to the great and wonderful wizard Trump, that it's not good enough for them. It's like, it's supposed to give in. I'm not even sure what the word is. Now, I think that you're probably seeing the same thing. I think a lot of the reason that you didn't see the huge crowds on January 18th, I think there's a lot of dispirited, people out there. That
I'll give you a metric for that. Just an anecdotal metric. After the election, the number of followers on my page dropped a bit. Same thing happened today. Just for I didn't even post anything today other than Heather Cox Richardson last night, and I've lost I don't know half a dozen or so, and I watched that just because I was looking for it. But yeah, people are dropping out because they just can't take it anymore. And I get it.
Well,
I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, they're tired.
Yeah,
it's like I feel the same way. That we did this day by day by day, sometimes by the hour, just being responsive, to all the outrages. And, and it's like, now I've got to go through this 4 more years. I don't want to do this.
Well, like you said at the beginning, I don't have the energy to respond to every single thing because he throws shit out there to get people to respond. I mean, the outrage is the point. And the just wearing people down is the point. So I can't do that, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on the things that matter.
Now I'm going to actually claim a win. As Harry is well aware, I made a very conscious decision back when Trump became the nominee in 2016 that I was going to mirror the way he talks, the way he treats people, and just shove it back out at people. And I've been, playing if you're going to go in the gutter, I'm going to go with you, except I'm going to bring a bigger knife and a stronger gun. And I've been seeing in, not the Nancy Pelosi age group in the Democratic Party, but the younger Democrats are now calling, we need to stop being nice and thinking that they're going to play by the rules. If there's no rules, then by God, we're going to do the same thing. If they go to the gutter, they're using my language now, finally, 8 years later.
How many times you get banned from Facebook, though?
Oh, my God. It's like I lost 10. So but now we have a no fact-checking, no truth thing, so I can say whatever I want.
The gloves are off, and I have been absolutely brutal. I mean, like, I don't even care. I really, and at this point with Facebook, I really don't care. I mean, throw me up. I do not care. And what's funny is I've been probably ruder than I've ever been on social media in the last week, whenever the ban was lifted or whenever the fact checking went away. And today I looked on, how's your page doing? Are you on the edge? I have I used to have violations. Otherwise, they're all disappeared. It's like I've been pardoned.
They don't exist.
Sort of the theme of the day.
They don't exist anymore. So
right.
It's hilarious. Welcome to our post-factual era.
I know. No, you mentioned something, Ed, though, that I've always believed in. In politics, I think one of the problems that the Democrats have always had. I'm a Democrat. I mean, I've always been one, and I always will. But I think it's in terms of understanding how elections are won. There's a big difference between winning the election and then governing. And I think sometimes the Democrats, especially at some of the lower levels, I call them lower levels, but they're equally important. City councils, school districts, what have you. You tend to campaign with your heart. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You got to campaign to win. You got to know how the game is played. You got to know the rules. It's the equivalent of a sports team, playing somebody in a position just because they're trying to give them a chance to win. You got to play with your best. And sometimes the argument is not going to really agree with what your heart says, but you got to go with it. You got to win, simply put, right? So I think the Republicans.
That's one of the things that I've actually taken up with some of the people at when I've been to these fundraisers is, I'm tired of this, to use your analogy, the team, and everybody on the team, has their special needs and,
right. And
literally to support one group at all makes you the vile enemy of another group. We've got people that support Israel and Palestine, and you don't do the right dance, and both groups hate you.
Yeah, I noticed it as well when we come to selecting candidates, which is one of my kind of pet things in my local party, is finding the right person. And there's a huge misunderstanding between qualifications and electability.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
And Republicans do not suffer from that, clearly, because they will throw any shit against the wall, and if it sticks, they run with it. Whereas we really have the party purity. We have, do they do this, whatever, and this and that. And that it didn't work this year. It sure didn't work in 2016, and it ain't going to work again.
Yeah, the Republicans have this attitude that wins elections in the sense that, hey, you want to wear the jersey, put it on, follow the rule book. Here's the playbook. Let's go. Now you're in. We're all going to vote together.
Yeah.
Democrats.
Well, you need to look at the other side. They've got not just a purity test, but a purity fire challenge. If you don't follow Trump down the line exactly, you're persona non grata. You can follow him down the line, but you host a fundraiser for somebody that was running, who was equally MAGA running against him, and that makes you non-viable. So
they're running into the same problems that we are in and have gone through. We may be coming out on the far side of it, but they're just now entering it because they have now become the big tent party. And the what we just witnessed between the tech bros and the MAGA hardcore, the Steve Bannons out there and the fight that hasn't been settled. It's just been put a lid on. Right. And they're going to have the same problems about, who do we really want? And let's face it, there are a lot of disaffected Republicans out there who just can't yet bring themselves to support Democrats.
Well, I look at it that especially with the tech people, this is not something that's political about them. They're just buying influence, pure and simple.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
Bezos, they saw Musk spend $250 million, which for him would be like me spending, $2,500 on a campaign and getting a 10,000 to 1 return on it. Yeah. I mean, they saw that, and we're going to come in and, do the train leaving the station fundraisers and get on board while they can get on board. That's why Bezos, Musk, and Zuckerberg were all sitting in front of all the political leaders in the Republican Party on the dais while Trump was getting inaugurated, because that tells you who is important.
And by the way, there were some very senior political leaders in D.C. In the House and the Senate that were looking at that going, what?
It reminds me.
There'll be some headlines about that tomorrow. Not in the front page, but back in the B section.
Right.
Yeah, in the movie Inglourious Bastards, they're debating whether they want the large venue or the smaller venue. And the brave private who the movie's about says, no, we need to make it so people are fighting to get in there, that, we want just the loyalists there that will, be moved by what's happening up on the stage and the screen. And I think it's almost identical. Unfortunately, we didn't have Quentin Tarantino there with a team to take them out. So.
Actually, I'm not convinced that Quentin Tarantino, not to throw any aspersions on his politics because I generally don't know, but it could have been produced by Quentin Tarantino. This whole damn thing is so surreal that it could really only come from the mind of someone like Quentin Tarantino, because you wouldn't have believed this crap 10 years ago.
No.
Nobody would believe this is where we'd be 10 years ago. And I really, it's cliche to say that, but it's still true.
Right. All the things that have happened were there, festering and growing. We just didn't see it or weren't willing to acknowledge it. They've been there. In fact, from my standpoint, going back and looking back, they've been there, since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
The Johnson, does all his stuff with, the Great Society, and that turned off all the, at the time, Southern Democrats. They became Republicans. Nixon ramped it up with the Southern strategy and, developed code words for being racist without sounding racist.
Mm-hmm.
Reagan ramped it up again. Everybody that's followed has added on. They've had a strategy to grab hold of SCOTUS. Now they've got it. And I don't see how you can come back from this.
Well, you can. I mean, that's the good news. I mean, we ended up our conversation last week with how countries have come back from this kind of thing, but it doesn't happen tomorrow, and I don't see it happening in 2026, for instance. It's going to take a lot longer, and that's just what we're going to have to suffer through.
To follow along that line of thinking, I've also been telling the people that I contribute money to that you're going to have to stay out of the way and let all the bad stuff that Trump is going to do to poor people, it's going to have to happen. And it's going to hurt saint and sinner alike. It's going to hurt people we like, people we don't like. And unfortunately, they're all going to have to suffer. And the more people in Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, Western North Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, that all voted wholeheartedly for Trump and what he wanted to do, they have to be crushed.
Well, since you're the medical guy, I'll give you a for instance. Because I use the VA as my primary medical provider. My GP is VA. All my specialist care is VA because I've got a great VA center here in DC. It's funny. If you look at it, you wouldn't think it was. It doesn't look nearly as nice as Tucson's, for instance, but they've got everything and it works. And I've received excellent care from there. And so why wouldn't I? Because my disabled, my combat status, all those things in the formula allow me to basically get head of line care at the VA.
That's the way that system's supposed to work.
Okay, thank you.
I trained at the VA, so trust me, I get it. And
let me continue. So some of the commentary I heard today, very little, was, Trump has said, and he has said in the past, and his supporters have all said they want to privatize the VA, get rid of it, which is going to cause some hiccups for me. But as a military retiree, I still have TRICARE. I mean, I have health insurance provided to me as a retired veteran that I can use instead. And that's apparently what they want to go to. So it'll be a hiccup. I've got to go, jump through the hoops of every time you change medical providers doing all that. But I'll be okay. But
you know how many soldiers and veterans are in the system right now?
That's what I mean to tell you, though. Okay, so retirees are a subset of veterans. It's a much smaller subset. You have to have served long enough to retire. So that's clearly not a whole lot of people compared to the million plus or millions that are in the VA. So all those millions in the VA that have no other care, all those homeless veterans that the Republican MAGA people whine about wanting to take care of, they're not going to be taken care of. They're going to not get medical care of any kind other than what they can cadge off the street. And while people like me who, have these other alternatives, well, it'll be a bit of a hiccup. It'll be a pain in the ass, but we'll be fine. I'll still continue to get care.
Is that right now, there is such a shortage of everything. You would destroy medicine for everybody by trying to shut down the VA, because they take care of so many millions of people. I don't know how it is with you, but even
I think it's the largest. If it's not the largest, it's one of the largest healthcare systems in the world. I think maybe National Health Service in the UK is bigger, but probably not by much.
Correct. I have been in medicine almost 40 years now. I know how to work the system. I'm at the point that I can try to pull strings, make the phone calls, which I could used to do 20 years ago. Can't do it anymore. It's like, if I want to get an appointment, it's 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
I can call for you, trying to do a friends and family favor. The doc I talk to on the other side is also limited by what they can do, because we are not in charge anymore. You've got administrators who are in charge, and they basically have taken away our power to act.
You're right. If they just suddenly, and it won't be sudden, because you can't turn off a ship like that quickly.
Oh, but come on, we're going to deport 15 million people here in the next 2 weeks.
Let's talk about that in a second, because that's funny. That's a funny story, I think, in a tragic way. But yeah, but you're going to see them starting to shut down services. You're no longer qualified for this. They're no longer going to do that. It'll be easy things at first. They're going to shut off the optometry. They're going to shut off the dental. Just like you do in any insurance plan. Those are no longer things that are going to be on your system, and before you know it, it's going to be really and truly the only people who might have VA healthcare at the end of this for you are me, because I do have head of the line service or status because of disabilities, etc. But yeah, those poor bastards who fought in Vietnam and have been living on the edge for the last 50 years. Good luck. Good luck. Sucks being you. I hate to say it, but that's what happens when you allow other people to vote for you.
Again, that comes down to there's going to have to be a whole lot of people that voted for Trump support what, I'm not even sure what he stands for. He's just so transactional. You're going to have to be hurt to the point of being homeless, starving. I don't even give a shit anymore. It's like, you have to suffer.
That's we were talking about 10 minutes ago or however long about just our reactions to the whole thing and not overreacting to every single thing that comes out. But a lot of that for me is quite honestly that I kind of don't give a shit anymore. For if you voted for this and you were not aware that this was what was going to come, and you're suddenly acting surprised after the last 10 years of nonsense that you don't have the things that you thought you should have, you no longer get your VA benefits. Well, you know what? Sucks being you, guy. Really and truly.
The biggest group I'm seeing that is starting to finally wake up are farmers in the Midwest who export almost all their wheat, soybeans, corn. And the biggest market they exported to was China. China says, you're going to increase your tariffs, we're going to stop buying all those. And they've already shut off wheat. And they're getting their wheat out of, I think it's Argentina or Brazil, or maybe both. But it's not the U.S.
One of our biggest exports for China, by the way, is pork.
Yeah.
They eat a lot of pigs. Yes, sucks being you, Iowa.
Well, and again, and this is going to lead back into Louis, Iowa does raise a lot of pigs, and they have to process those pigs in these big plants. Yep. And guess who does all the work? Almost 100% of it, Louis. Who does that?
These are people that are immigrants and people that would take those kinds of jobs because they come here for seeking a better life and so forth. Sorry, I had to take a quick call right now, but I was hearing in the background what you guys were talking about. But you're right, Ed. I in the work that I do and in a daily kind of a day-to-day, I hear from these people all the time. And I think that the fear that they have in their community is real. And I can't relate to it. I don't try, but I sense the emotion and the feeling that they give. And I'll tell you, I think what could potentially happen and will happen is that you're going to start seeing over the course of the next few months when these these raids start happening, these immigration raids, whether you agree with them, disagree, whatever, you're going to start seeing people not show up for work.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have some problems. And it's not just the farmers, the farm workers, it's people that do construction. It's, the guy that was supposed to come over and fix your faucet. It was, the guy that's supposed to come over and mow your lawn. I mean, we're going to start seeing this, and how, the government reacts to it is going to be interesting. And I think how society reacts to it is going to be even more important.
You got to remember, Trump and et al., they're not going to care.
They're not going to care. No, I agree.
I can tell you, if I have a service that mows my lawn, I'm not mowing my lawn. I'm going to let the HOA just go suck on it, because it's going to be 3 feet high before I do anything about it. So
you live in the desert. It's going to take you a while.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but and Ken's been talking about this for the last several weeks, that coming from the infrastructure and the construction trades, who's going to do that? And at this point, again, it's not like this is a surprise. Specific to your point about the meat industry, we learned this in COVID. I mean, that's where things started breaking out. And why? Because they had no protections. And who were they? They were all of the immigrant workers who came in, legal and otherwise. And so this shouldn't be a surprise.
No,
we should know this is going to happen. And it is going to happen.
It turned out meat packing plant workers were the hardest hit by COVID.
Yeah.
Almost all of them got sick. They had the highest death rate. They had the highest disability rate. It was awful.
And just behind them, 1 or 2 spaces, if that many, were the ones in nursing homes, who, by the way, same population. And what are you going to do?
I was in the grocery store yesterday, and I decided to go around and just start taking pictures of where the fruits, vegetables, meats came from.
I saw that post. Yeah.
And I was actually, it's winter, so I can't expect our tomatoes to be coming from Texas or Florida or wherever.
No, but
they were all from someplace else. All
absolutely. Oh yeah.
Mexico.
Even in the summer, they're almost all from someplace else because of the labor cost to harvest.
I didn't realize it, but we get a lot of our tomatoes from Canada.
Yep.
And
I was talking to, I think I mentioned to both of you that I'm having some work done in the backyard, and the guys that are doing the work they're from Guatemala, and they were sharing with me their story, and they were telling me, because I was asking them, how did you get here? Their story essentially. And one of the guys mentioned that he should be in Delaware, of all places. Delaware, we don't really think, and that all the people that he knows that are from Guatemala as well, that are in Delaware right now, are just leaving. So, and these are the people that in Delaware are doing the work that we just talked about. So they're not leaving the country, but they're moving around, and they're in hiding essentially.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this is really not going to stop. I mean, immigration coming into the country, people are still going to find a way around the system. I mean,
they're just going to do different things.
They're going to do different things. That's it. I mean,
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting to see the first roadblocks go up.
The what?
Roadblocks.
Oh, roadblocks. Correct. You mean
military operations?
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because I think this was one of the humorous points for me over the weekend, was that reports came out, I don't know, 48, 72 hours ago, that one of the first roundup, the first illegal roundup, was going to be in Chicagoland somewhere. And the headline yesterday was that whatever that asshole's name is going to take over ICE and be the immigration czar, said, well, we're rethinking that since the plans came out and everybody knows. Because as soon as that came out, people they were going to Iowa. They were heading anywhere else.
Right. And that's
suddenly,
the thing.
Suddenly Wisconsin had a glut of labor.
Yeah. And in today's world, I mean, with social media, things, you can't, nothing's a secret. I mean, So I hear you. It's
Well, Louis, I'm sure you're aware that you go over to California from here, and I know that when I've driven down I-8, the Border Patrol will have internal checkpoints.
they
Oh,
do.
I grew up with them.
Did you?
Yeah, well, you don't even have to go that far. Honestly, there are two semi-permanent checkpoints just out in Cochise County, one just north of Sonoyta, which, I mean, they've got infrastructure in place. I mean, it's there. Oh,
I'm well
and
aware of that when you go down to
the one
Rochester.
on 19 south of Tucson. So driving from Tucson to go to work in Sierra Vista at Fort Huachuca, I passed through them multiple times.
Well, my prediction is that these are going to be moved far interior, that people that are not used to seeing Border Patrol checkpoints are going to start seeing them in Iowa and Illinois and Minnesota and Ohio, Kentucky. There's a huge legal
if they pull in the military to help, then absolutely that could happen. They don't have the manpower now. They would really have to hire a shit ton of Border Patrol and other ICE agents to do that. But if they just activated the military can man those checkpoints, and they could do that if that's what they wanted to do. There's nothing to stop them.
They said that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yep. And good luck if you're, let's say you're undocumented and you have an outstanding warrant, which is totally conceivable.
Sure.
That's means for you to be questioned, detained. Who knows? I mean, it is like that. I don't even think that's a question.
We're definitely going to see that, and then we're going to see what kind of reaction the American people have. I saw a poll somewhere recently. More than 50% of the American public supports deporting undocumented people who have arrest warrants or who have committed felonies.
Well, guess what?
Guess
we already
what?
have laws for that.
Well, I know, and I mean, I do too. If you've committed a felony and you're on the lam and you're undocumented, get your ass out of here. That shouldn't be Republican or Democrat. That's just law enforcement.
Every country around the world will not let felons come into their country, which is why Trump is not going to be able to go into almost any other country in the world without a special invitation.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. you don't. It's really hard to block the entrance of somebody as important. For God's sake, Putin can pretty much go where he wants to go, and Russia has the GDP of New York City.
And one of the things to even keep in mind or throw out there, the truth is that if you ask even a lot of immigrants that are here, despite their status, whatever, the question, who should be deported, they're going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I talked to many of these people, and a lot of these people even will say, you know what, my uncle who has a felony, this and that, he was convicted, he should be out of here. They have the same belief. And I think that's one of the miscalculations that a lot of the Democrats made, is that, assuming that just because you have a family member that's an immigrant and has committed a crime, that you want them to stay here. The immigrants don't believe that. They don't think like that.
No, they came here to be safe and secure and to be able to have an existence. And they have the same basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs as anybody else out there. And they don't want assholes around them.
No, that's well said. Exactly. That's what it comes down to. They don't want that crazy drunk uncle that keeps coming around every year and getting arrested to stay here. If someone's going to leave, it has to be him, kind of a thing, So,
and if he's a MAGA supporter, it's even better, because that could be.
He might be.
Yeah, actually, I think that was pretty common. So,
but you're right. That was a miscalculation, and nobody wants to keep those people in the country except for extreme weirdos.
Right. Well, one of the arguments has also been made that just by being illegal, that's a felony. So that's enough. That's the excuse they're going to use to get everybody out.
Yeah, that's where it falls apart with a lot of people. It's like, no.
Right.
I'm not a criminal. Did you have the proper paperwork to come through? Because if you don't, that's sort of a felony.
It's a fine line.
We're just going to take you and kick you out.
Right. You're illegal. I mean, right. So.
We touched on it, but one of the things that I'm actually worried about is the construction industry and how that's going to affect all these disasters, not just the California with their fires.
It's not just California.
Oh yeah.
It's everywhere. You can't find a home.
Mm-mm.
Unless you're making serious big bucks,
Right.
your ability to find a home in most of America is really restricted. There's just no inventory or very little.
It's the supply. The inventory is just
Well,
not there.
there's actually an issue with that, and I'll let Louis fill us in on that. That a lot of the entry level housing is now owned by hedge funds and New York firms. What I've read is over 20% of those homes are now owned by investment funds. So so somebody making $40,000 a year trying to buy a home is competing against BlackRock with almost $1 trillion of assets.
Yeah,
It's a very unfair fight.
My daughter and her husband just now are closing on a home, I think tomorrow or sometime this week, and they're both engineers with master's degrees, making very good money here in the DC area, and the home that they bought is not cheap. And it's 60 some odd years old, and it looks like something that your parents would have bought when they were about to have you. You know, it's not big. It's a nice house. I hope she doesn't watch this. She probably won't because Dad, you know. But I mean, it's again, nice house for what they do. We'll serve them very well. But it is not the show place that you might expect for the price they're paying. Certainly not what you could have bought in Tucson back in 2008.
Oh my God! In 2008, you could bought half a Tucson for a song.
Oh, yeah, there are people today that are renting rooms for what would normally be a mortgage payment.
Yeah,
$1,200 for a bedroom.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, one of the things this is going to do is it's going to stifle the resale market, because if you've got a loan that's anywhere under 7%, you can't afford to move. You know, unless you have to move.
And the rates are only going to go up. The interest rates are only going to go up.
They're going to go up. Yeah.
And dealing, with what I do, I deal with realtors and brokers every day, literally on a daily. And there's one thing, and you all will relate to this, in that there will always be people out there with cash that can afford something. There's always going to be people that are going to have the money and the means and the resources that are going to swoop up the properties. And what that does is it squeezes out the people that are first-time home buyers, families that are professionals, engineers, this and that. And you have a smaller and smaller number of people eligible to buy a home, unless you're having nowadays 20% down is not even, it helps, but you're talking nowadays competing with people with 50% down.
Yes.
Wow,
and houses in much of the country. My cousin, who just had his house burned down 3 months after he bought it, for him to get the house that he got, which was not cheap at all, he had to bid over price to get that house, because that several times he tried before, he got scooped out from under him in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, the real problem is you get at the higher up you go at the price points, the more likely they're going to be all cash deals. And so that leaves a very narrow segment of the move up market that you can go and acquire loans. And it's like Lou was pointing out, the old 2080 rule it's gone by the wayside, because the banks aren't going to let you. Yeah, they're not going to take it back and lose money. So 50% sounds about right.
So I'm typical empty nester. We had a 5-bedroom, what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom home in Tucson that we bought for a song in 2008 when the market had crashed, and it appreciated well. And then of course now it's just me and my wife, so we don't need nearly that many bedrooms. Nonetheless, it's cheaper for us to rent. We got a nice place. It's cheaper for us to rent a home here in the DC area than it would be for us to buy. The mortgage would be more expensive than the rent to get the equivalent house here.
And it's just absurd, and it's wild. I know. And it's true. And think about it, like, shifting gears a bit to the fires and how all this relates, is that think about somebody that bought a property, years ago. I'm talking years ago, let's say in the 70s or the 80s, along the coast, that got burned down. Let's say they bought it for, I don't know, $200,000, if that, back then. It gets burned down, and now with the insurance payout, that's not going to be nearly as much as the value. What's going to happen to that land?
Oh, it's going to get sold. In fact, the figure I've seen is about 50 in Malibu, which everybody thinks is Kim Kardashian area with everybody worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's actually not true. It's at least 50% of the housing is owned by people who either inherited it,
Yeah, that's correct.
or they bought it a long time ago at prices that now just seem like, insane.
Fantasy.
I would say even the percent is probably higher than that. Even, I mean, a lot of those people that live there, you'd be surprised. You're right. They're not, some of them, but not really. These are people that inherited these homes years and years and years. There's a city in Southern California called Claremont. It's a little tiny city that is nestled against the foothills. Very, very similar situation. A lot of that money there and these homes are worth millions of dollars, but not because they're being sold every year. It's because people from, purchased it in the 60s and the 70s and just handed them down generational wealth. And what happens if there's a fire there, or, God forbid there's an earthquake and these houses crumble?
That's exactly the dynamic of Altadena, which, Altadena was one of those communities back when I was born that was outside the red line. And that was one of the few places that African Americans could buy homes. And it's a nice community, but it's still like, I think 3/4 or more % Black owned properties.
Correct.
And it's a delightful place. That's where my cousin had his house. I've been there. It was a really cute community, town.
Designed very well. I mean, suburb back in the day, kind of a thing,
But so many of those houses were passed down. There was certainly gentrification going on, as evidenced by my cousin. But so many of those things have been passed down for generation 2 or 3 or 4. And how are they going to afford to build back? I don't know.
Not only are you going to get hit with rebuild costs that you probably can't afford, the taxes are going to reset too.
Yeah.
And
there's a law in California that there's a way around that.
Okay, that's good then.
Yeah, there's a way around that. You have to jump through a few hoops, but yes, you can not have that happen.
A couple of executive orders, but here's the thing on that, it's a temporary thing.
Yeah.
And at some point, the government is going to they're going to calculate how much property tax revenue they've been losing over the course of the years. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a fight over where the tax revenue goes. Because think about it, you buy a home in the 70s in Malibu and it's rebuilt, and the government agrees to tax you at the 70s rate with a brand new built home. How long are they going to allow that to happen?
With all the code upgrades, making it substantially a better home.
Right.
Yeah, I know you're absolutely right. At some point, the largesse is going to run out when people forget that that the human disaster and tragedy, and people will have sold their stuff because, I mean, honestly, if I were my cousin, I would be questioning, why the hell do I want to build there again?
So there's a little tangent here, but I'm not going to go into detail. But let me just put it like this: there's a law in California that was recently changed, and in the past, prior to maybe a year or two ago, you would be able to hand down your property to your family, whoever it is, your kids, and they would inherit it and pay the taxes at the rate from the year that you bought it. So if you bought it in the 40s, and you inherited it in 2020, you would pay the tax rate of the 40s or 50s or whenever whenever it was first bought.
Which is basically nothing.
Yeah, it would be like rent today.
That's correct. Now, the law was recently changed 2 years ago because the government calculated how much property value, the revenue they're losing. Now the law states that can only happen. You can only hand it down and inherit that old property tax rate if you live in it. Because what was happening was people were inheriting it, but then they were living in wherever they wanted, Texas, Delaware. So now you actually have to live in the property.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's people that are going out and doing inspections and, what do you mean living in it? What's defined as a residency, all this and that. I can see something like that happening here with the fires in the properties where, they're going to have some type of requirement of you to have to live there, whatever. I mean,
well, what that's going to do, Louis, is if you're a citizen of California, your income's going to be subject to California income taxes. So that's really what's driving that. Right.
Exactly. And there's always someone that's going to be able to afford it, or some corporation. So,
well, that's exactly it. California's unaffordable simply because there are a lot of millionaires and billionaires who live there and they can afford it.
they can afford it. That's
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's what it comes down to, man. I mean, it's all money, you know.
Well, it's also the way they do their supply and construction. I mean, you go to San Francisco, you drive up from SFO, none of the houses are over 2 or 3 stories tall, all the way into downtown.
Right.
Well, there's a reason for that too, and it's because the earth quakes a little bit up
Right.
there and knocks them down. So, I mean, there is that.
We've got the technology to actually take
Yeah,
care of it. So,
I get that, but that means new housing as opposed to the 50-year-old housing. So,
You know, it kind of, this is not funny, but have you ever experienced an earthquake, like what it feels like when you're in a
Yeah.
7 or 6 up?
Mhm.
Oh, man, there is nothing like the feeling of the earth moving underneath you and the walls moving. You know, the worst earthquake I ever felt, and I felt many of them growing up in Southern California, but I'll never forget it. I was sitting at my desk at the computer at home, and the earthquake happened. It was like a 6.3 or something, 6.5, whatever it was. And I literally, it was an up and down earthquake. It wasn't a rolling one.
Mm.
And my chair jumped about 2 feet in the air. And I will never forget that feeling in my life. I jumped up and it came down, man.
listen, the first earthquake that I was probably, I was 2000, I was 39 years old or about to turn 39 years old when I experienced my first earthquake, and it was in Skopje, Macedonia, and I was in a basement briefing room, basically a bottom pit in the bottom of the American embassy there, and all of a sudden everything just went boom.
Yep.
It was one sharp, shock.
It is
of course,
unsettling.
we thought it was a bomb. Everybody thought we'd been bombed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
Big bomb go boom.
I've had a few more since then, to include one here in D.C. back almost a decade ago, and then several more in Afghanistan. And yeah, that it is unsettling to say the least.
It is, to say the least, the worst feeling in the world. You know,
The only one I went through was I was on call, and I was actually awake at, I think it was like 3:30 in the morning, doing a case. You know, I'm dead tired. I'm sitting in my chair, and then all of a sudden I just started swaying back and forth like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang, I am so tired. I can't even stay in my chair. So.
Yeah, you start seeing the chandeliers move, and it's just a strange. The animal, yeah, it's a strange. The dogs start barking, car alarms go off.
There's been a couple of them where I thought there was a train going by or heavy trucks, and there's like, but no, that's not what's happening.
That's the one thing people don't understand about earthquakes too, is that there's a noise associated with it, like this. Sounds like a train coming through. It's the strangest sound in the world.
It does, especially those rolling ones that you're just. I mean, that does sound like you're next to a rail yard. It's weird.
It really does. It's
yeah.
Well, I tell you what, guys, we are out to past 45 minutes. So the good thing is we've made it past the first day. There's been no war started. Nobody rounded up yet. Yeah. I mean, everything's going to be very highly qualified.
We honestly, I have no fucking clue what's going to happen.
Nobody does.
You guys got to watch some of the clips from today. You're going to be surprised. It's weird, man.
Oh, the Daily Show will be on.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be getting my news. I'll let them suffer.
Did you hear about this whole this UFO egg thing he's going to release? Did you hear today? You got to look it up. You got to look. Today was a weird day, man. There was like this UFO video of some egg release, and he's going to disclose files and JFK this, and it was bizarre.
It's going to be entertaining.
Yeah. Just Google
like,
UFO egg JFK. You'll see what I'm saying.
We're going to be swimming in the cesspool for a while, and all I can say is just don't choke on the corn nuggets.
There's going to be plenty of material for the late shows, though. I'll tell you that.
Anyway, for the people that have been with us, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here with us. We had planned to go more in depth about the effects of the California fire, but we have Louis actually going to a convention of realtors.
Yeah, it's the California Realtors Association is going to have one of their upcoming business meetings in a few weeks, and I'm going to know a lot more information once I get back.
So we thought we'd defer that till Louis could come back armed with more info. We touched on it some today, but I'll end by saying my prediction is you're not going to be seeing construction in California for years. They're trying to do executive orders with Governor Newsom. at that level, but the entrenched political opponents in real estate, the construction industry, the insurance industry at the government level is going to be monumental, and they're not going to give in, and it's going to take a long time to sort this out.
Yeah.
Well, I already said I have no clue what's gonna happen. It's tomorrow's gonna be an adventure.
It's going to be another day.
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll close it off. We'll see you here again. Who knows what's going to happen over the next 7 days till we get back here. So we'll be talking about it when we get there. So until then, thank you.
You got it.
Adios, everyone.